Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Today's video is going to be taking a look at some of the top offensive draft prospects for the 2025 draft that could end up becoming fantasy reliable starters for you or some type of impact players. And one thing that you have to keep in mind when it comes to fantasy football for rookies, whether it be a dynasty league, a keeper league, you're doing a rookie draft, or maybe you're just here watching to see what rookies would be best for your redraft leagues, sometimes talent is just as important as landing spot. So depending on where these 10 players go, it could greatly change this list. And that's why we'll redo it after the draft is done. But make sure you stay tuned to the Fantasy Headliners all offseason long while we cover lots of rookie content, lots of draft content, and of course, all types of fantasy football, whether it be dynasty, redraft, or any other league you can imagine. And number one on my list, everybody's got him up here. It's Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State. He's going to be a starter right away. And if he were to land with a team like the Dallas Cowboys, he's absolutely going to be fantasy viable to begin with. He could even be a top 12 option. Now, when it comes to Jeanty, he does a lot of things really, really well. He's a very balanced running back because he's good at all of the things you need a running back to be good at to be successful. He makes guys miss. He is shifty in the open field. He's not scared to run through you though. He's power and finesse. He can do both of those things to pick up extra yards, break tackles, make guys miss, or just continue to climb the ladder in terms of total yards in any given game. Also, finding the end zone, he's got a nose for the end zone with some big plays as well. There's one thing about Jeanty though when it comes to transitioning to the next level, it's whether or not his pass blocking and his breakaway speed could end up pulling him off the field at any point in time. His stature, while it's good for running the football, isn't really the best when it comes to blocking. He has to improve there. And he's also not going to be top speed like some other running backs at the NFL level, which may not end up hurting him all that much, but it could limit some upside in any given week because he may not have some of those big plays that you see from some of the top guys like Saquon Barkley or Jahmyr Gibbs. But also, Jeanty has really good hands, and he's going to be a guy that's going to raise his fantasy football ceiling every single week with his ability as a pass catcher out of the backfield, especially if he lands with a team that's going to give him the run as the main primary running back. One thing I want to bring to everybody's attention real quick though, the scouting reports that you see on screen during this video are going to be loaded into our 2025 fantasy football draft guide as well. And there's going to be tons of them for every single position in the draft. So whether you just want some rookie scouting reports, or you're looking for your dynasty league, keeper league, or wondering about your redraft leagues as well, plus for you IDP players over there, if you use defensive players in your fantasy leagues, we're going to be covering every single position with these scouting reports. And our 2025 fantasy football draft guide will be available before the NFL draft even takes place. It's going to be filled with all of these scouting reports, dynasty rankings, dynasty buy now, sell now, all of that type of information will be there. And that's even going to be before all of our redraft content starts to post in the same exact guide. So make sure you're ordering yours over on our website because I tell you what, dynasty content, redraft content, it doesn't matter. We kill it all. At number 2 on my list is my wide receiver 1, Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. This kid isn't the type of wide receiver maybe at the high end that we've seen as of lately with like a Jamar Chase or a Malik Neighbors or guys of that type of stature. But he's got everything you want to be a very successful NFL wide receiver and be a big playmaker as well. Really the biggest knock on him is he just doesn't have that big breakaway speed. But what he does over the middle of the field and with his quick burst and acceleration definitely helps him to win very early in his routes, which creates a ton of separation. So even without that big breakaway speed, he's definitely a guy that finds himself with a lot of balls thrown to him over the top, and in one-on-one coverage, he can go up and he can win at the point of the catch pretty easy. Now, if a team decides to make T-Mac their #1 pass catching option, he's still going to do very well at the NFL level in terms of his short, quick, and burst acceleration at the line of scrimmage. He creates a lot of separation right away. So those slant routes, those drags, those crossing routes, all of those type of things, he's able to find himself open in the middle of the field quite frequently. Now, if a team decides to use him as just an X receiver and send him on go routes consistently, that may not be his best usage. Will he win on jump balls down the field? Absolutely. But again, if he's lacking some of that breakaway speed facing #1 cornerbacks, he may not be able to separate based on his speed alone. But the one thing I can tell you, if he is somebody's #2 pass catching weapon and he gets to face a lot of cornerback twos at the NFL level, he's going to be very successful. At #3, let's talk about Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. A lot of people are going to see the production and value of Brock Bowers from last season, and they're going to want to try and emulate that in some way, shape, or form, especially if they're weak at the tight end position. But Tyler Warren may actually be a more well-rounded player than what Brock Bowers is. One thing about Brock Bowers is that we knew he was going to be a receiving threat. But when you take a look at Tyler Warren, not only is he a receiving threat, but he is a guy that Penn State would use on end arounds or different plays out of the backfield. He's also an elite blocker. His athleticism is probably better than Bowers as well. If these guys were in the same draft class, this might be a hot take. Tyler Warren would be my tight end 1. Brock Bowers would not. Tyler Warren is a guy that if he is drafted, because he's so good as a blocking tight end and understands the schematics of blocking and playing a receiver so well, he could become a pass catching weapon right away, and a guy that doesn't need to leave the field all that often. So if a tight end needy team were to draft Tyler Warren, he could become a fantasy impact player and a potential top 12 option right off the bat. Next up, we have 4A and 4B, with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders being right here at #4 for me. Now, these are the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft class, and you have these 2 guys, and then you kind of have the field behind them, really, in my opinion, at this point. So when I take a look at Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, really there's a lot of back and forth in who's going to be #1. Some people have Ward going #1. Some people have Sanders going #1. Some people think the #1 pick could end up being traded. But both of these guys should end up landing in pretty decent positions and being able to start right away. But that's what's going to really change things here for us. If Cam Ward is drafted to a team where he's going to start right away, but maybe it's like the New York Giants where he's throwing to a guy like Malik Neighbors, Cam Ward definitely jumps up a lot higher. Where if, let's say, Shedeur Sanders were to go to the Tennessee Titans, where when you take a look at their weapons, you don't have a Malik Neighbors there, so you're not really as excited about it. He probably falls below Cam Ward. So draft spot is going to be really important for both of these guys. Or maybe a team like Las Vegas ends up jumping up. Cleveland, do they draft somebody? There's a lot of questions at the quarterback position on where these 2 guys will end up landing, and we'll definitely have to talk more about it after the draft. Now, the guys that I've talked about at numbers 1 through 4 definitely have an opportunity to help you level up your fantasy team right away. The same way Turtle Beach allows us to level up our game, especially those of you out there in Headliner Nation. Whether it be gaming, watching movies, listening to music, some of the best headphones on the market these days are going to be from Turtle Beach. And I absolutely love these things because they come with 2 separate pieces that you can plug into your computer that would allow you to not only bring in all of the audio from your gaming system, but then you can listen to music as well. Their audio equipment is great, but on top of it, they have new mice and new keyboards that definitely will help your computer experience as well. So make sure you head on over to Turtle Beach, use code word Headliners, get 10% off your entire order, and try out some of the best audio headphones in the market today. So some of the guys here in the middle part of the rankings are really going to be reliant on where they land because their skill set may not have the same ceiling as some of the guys that we just talked about, especially right now. But that doesn't mean over the next couple of years that they won't develop into game-changing players for whatever team end up drafting them. My RB2 in this draft class is Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. Now, Omarion Hampton and Ashton Jeanty kind of remind me of the situation we had from a couple of years ago when you took a look at Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, Omarion Hampton is not Jahmyr Gibbs. Let me make that entirely clear right now. But he's being overshadowed because of how good Jeanty is. And that was the same thing for Gibbs when it came to Bijan. Everyone was talking about Bijan and how fantastic he was, and it really overshadowed how good Jahmyr Gibbs could end up being at the NFL level. And during that draft process, I was telling everybody that Gibbs is way closer to Bijan Robinson than what a lot of people expect, and he has a chance to be just as good at the NFL level. And we're seeing that right now. For Omarion Hampton, he is going to have to land somewhere where he's not going to have to give up a ton of carries to another running back. If he is a guy that can be the number one main back, that is great. Or if he can land in a team with a situation at the running back position, kind of like what we saw with Tampa Bay last year, where you had Rachaad White, but he wasn't really great in some areas, even though he got a ton of volume. Bucky Irving comes in. He's way better in terms of his consistency and ends up unseating Rachaad White. Omarion Hampton could be something very similar to that. He's got everything that you want in a really positive running back when it comes to vision, balance, footwork, running through people. He is a very, very tough runner, but sometimes he gets a little too excited and he'll try to accelerate to full speed before he even gets to the offensive line. So patience is going to be a big part of his game and something that will allow him to be way more successful at the next level. At number 6, Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Now, he got completely overshadowed by Jeremiah Smith, but he is your prototypical guy that can come in and play as a slot wide receiver and be very, very successful right away. Now, for Emeka Egbuka, I definitely have been diving into him, and to me, he gives me some Golden Tate vibes. Now, Golden Tate working out of the slot at times, especially like when he was in Detroit, very, very good. A guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, that type of a receiver that can work out of the slot, is going to win over the middle of the field and is going to be a very good route runner. Emeka Egbuka fits that type of characteristic. Now, one area that I would love to see him go to, what about Washington? Playing on the inside with Terry McLaurin on the outside, Emeka Egbuka could be a big-time contributor for Washington or a team similar to Washington right away. So keep an eye out for him to fall with the team that needs a slot wide receiver that could give him a ton of targets right away. Now, let's be completely honest. From just a pure football standpoint, Travis Hunter is much higher on this list. Travis Hunter may be one of the best draft prospects in this draft and will be locked into the top 5. But we're talking more along the lines of fantasy purposes in this video. And as of right now, we don't really know what Travis Hunter is going to do. Is he going to come out as just a wide receiver? Is he going to come out as just a cornerback? Is he going to try and play both? If he tries to play both, does it affect him on the offensive side of the ball? I'll tell you what, the dude played both ways in college, and he had the absolute stamina to make that happen. But the NFL game is a lot faster, and it's a lot different. And he's going to have to play at 100% the entire time to go up against other NFL caliber players. That is not going to be something that's going to be easy to do on both sides of the ball. So maybe he decides to only play cornerback and he does kick returns and punt returns instead. Kind of like the guy that coached him for the last few years, Deion Sanders. Maybe he does decide to be a wide receiver because, well, that's where he's going to make the most money. We're going to have to wait and see on what he decides, where he lands, and how he's utilized. Last offseason, Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy made headlines at the Combine for the fastest 40 time ever. And then for the Kansas City Chiefs, he put together a great stretch of numbers at the end of the season. And I think that's going to get people talking about Matthew Golden from Texas this year. While he's not as fast as Xavier Worthy, he's the same type of down the field threat that is going to make an impact in an offense that needs a secondary wide receiver that can stretch the field. I would definitely expect to see some Xavier Worthy type comparisons when talking about Matthew Golden this year. Once again, he's not going to be nearly as fast. He's not going to be setting the combine on fire with his 40 time, but he's definitely the type of field stretcher that teams could look to the same way the Chiefs look to Worthy. Coming into the 2024 season, Colston Loveland was looked at as being the tight end one in this year's draft class. Now, Tyler Warren, who was mentioned much earlier in this video, seems to kind of be the tight end one now, with Colston Loveland being right behind him, but really a lot of that has to do with number one, being injured this past season, and number two, playing in an inept Michigan offense. So when you take a look at Colston Loveland, he's going to set the combine on fire, and his physical tools are going to be why he is drafted, not what happened this past season. But he's got tons of game film with JJ McCarthy that makes him absolutely pop on tape. Don't be shocked if Colston Loveland does end up going before Tyler Warren in any draft scenario. More than likely, though, at this point, he will go after him, but he's going to be a really good receiving weapon for any other team. He's not nearly as good as a blocker as Tyler Warren, but he's not bad either. This guy is quickly becoming one of my favorite sleepers in the 2025 draft, Alec Iomanner out of Stanford. Now, there's guys at the NFL level that unfortunately don't get a whole lot of love coming out of college because they play in offenses that just were not that good. Iomanner's one of those guys, similar to a guy like Nico Collins. When he was in college, he had Shea Patterson as his quarterback. Shea Patterson couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Nico Collins now, though, is showing all of that talent that he had at one point in time. When you take a look at Iomanner, unfortunately, you're going to have to find tape that maybe doesn't pop off the screen to you because of the offense that he played in. But there are some things that he is going to do very well at the next level. Iomanner is very strong at the point of catch. He is going to battle with some of the toughest cornerbacks in the league, and he's going to win on a lot of balls down the field. He's a very smooth route runner. He gets in and out of his breaks well, and he disguises them well. One issue is the fact that he just didn't run a whole lot of routes, though, so he's going to need to develop that route tree. But because he's so smooth in that process, he'll probably end up picking up on those very well and being able to do whatever an NFL team asks of him. The one thing that he could definitely fix, though, is his contact at the line of scrimmage. When he breaks out of the line of scrimmage, he's very tall and he can't really battle with the stronger cornerback. So sometimes he can get knocked off his route right away. He needs to stay lower. He needs to get more aggressive, especially with his hands. He needs to win the battle at the line of scrimmage that allows him to get a little bit more separation when he gets into his route. Headliner Nation, it's still very early in my draft process. I know that the combine's coming up and the draft feels like it will be here before we know it. But I am diving into all of these guys, and you're going to see more rookie content coming your way over the next several weeks. So if you're new here, subscribe to the channel if you're looking for those type of breakdowns. And of course, if you've been here the entire time, we appreciate you still being here in the off season and taking in all the content that we're putting out. Make sure you hit that like button for me. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Start pre-ordering your draft guides right now. And I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.